You as a leader, as you've grown from that prototyping stage to actually being in market, a lot of people that watch here, Emmy, are entrepreneurs, and they may be operating a t-shirt company in Berlin or a technology company in Silicon Valley and all types of organizations in between. And they're always looking for people to help them with their path as a leader, as they've continued to grow and develop. What has been your development over the last 2 years as you've now gone to 5 cities, in market, 40 people? Obviously, that's much different from those first years when you were prototyping, you had the idea and proof of concept. What adjustments have you had to make as a CEO, founder, and leader with your team in the last 2 years?
It's a great question. So by far, my biggest learning has been that it's all about the quality of your team. In the past 2 years at Ezra, we've built an incredible leadership team that kind of helps run the company. And I guess my biggest learning has been to hire people that are better than myself in all of the different areas of the business. And I'm really fortunate right now to work with a group of people for whom I would want to work for if in a kind of different universe, our commercial lead, our scientists, and so on. I would love to work for those individuals at one point, and that was my I guess lens through which to look at when hiring them.
That is a great answer, and what a great takeaway, regardless of what company you're in. You just said, I want to hire people that I'd like to work for. Even if you look at them, hey, this is a medical engineer, this is a biomedical engineer, this is a biologist, and they just got their master's or something, you're hiring to work for them, and you're looking at that person and saying, I'd like to work for them someday. What a great way to test people. Would I ever like to work for this person someday as I'm building out high expertise people? And you in medicine, obviously you're hiring high-end biologists, molecular biologists, or the very people, imaging experts and the folks that are gonna make that team for you. Who are you? Because a CEO, you really take out the E. We all come from somewhere. Most entrepreneurs are either product people or business development people. It's a fact. Very few CFOs launch companies. Maybe a few, but the majority come from a CTO, chief product officer, chief business development, because you know a market, you know an area, you see a need, and normally the CEO comes from that. So let's start with you first. Who are you? When you take the CEO away, who are you really underneath that?
Yeah, so I'm a scientist at heart. I studied applied mathematics, computer science. I'm a bit of a geek. Part of how I got to focus on Ezra is that I cycled through about a dozen different ways in which you could go about solving the problem of early detection and figuring out which one works and which one doesn't, and so on. And I really enjoyed that kind of almost scientific approach to finding a solution to a problem. In my role as kind of the I guess leader of the company, I really think I only have 3, maybe 4 responsibilities. Set the strategy and kind of the direction of the company, hire the very best people I can find, and kind of just talked about that, raise money for these individuals to have resources to continue building, and then keep people accountable. And I think if I'm doing those 4 things well, everything else will kind of come from that.
You bring up something very interesting there. A lot of people that I've consulted with and talked to on small businesses, their first org chart looks like a wagon wheel. They're in the middle, and they have all the spokes out there because everybody reports to them. And then one day, usually about $1 million in revenue, they got to add some sort of structure, because the CEO, the founder, they have to stay in the lane that's going to give the highest value and slowly move things off their desk so that they can do that. Because the bigger you go, the more complex you go, you're trying to hold these people accountable, and all of a sudden you have too many things on your desk. As you grew and developed, and I know this is not your first company, who was the most important people to have around you? You say, if I'm gonna stay here as the scientist, running strategy, hiring the best people that are high-end experts to join me, and yes, raising money. If I'm going to do that as this founder and CEO, I got to keep things off my desk. As you develop, what things for you did you realize I need key people here and their job is to do those things great and keep them off my desk?
Great question. So in both my previous company, Brainy and Ezra, I think it's been two key things that I've had to bring in that really freed me up so that I can focus on strategy and product and so on. The first one is commercial. So I can sell and I can meet with imaging partners and so on. I wouldn't say it's my strong suit. And so at Ezra, we brought an incredible chief commercial officer, Jason Goodman, who's also an entrepreneur, started a number of companies himself, and now he runs our commercial operation. And then secondly, on operations, I'm not kind of particularly inclined to deal with the kind of day-to-day ops of a business, or in our case, of kind of managing imaging partners. And so I've had to bring in a phenomenal operations lead who kind of runs our operations day to day. I think the important thing for a founder is to figure out what are you good at, focus on that, and kind of externalize everything else, or not externalize, but hire people for everything else. It might be that someone is really good at commercial, and then they should bring folks in to be complementary for other areas. In my case, it's kind of, I wanted to focus on product and strategy and bring in folks to run everything else.
There you go. Well, this is not your first company. What was your experience like, and did you have any outside voices, like maybe an investor or a confidant or a board member that sat with you and said, hey, you got to get this stuff off your desk? Can you think of the first time where you had to look at that and say, this is what I'm really good at, I'm the scientist, and this is just taking up time? What was that process like for you developing as a leader? You know, because we can all be founders. It's hard to be the CEO, and then it's really hard to actually be the leader. Did you have a confidant or board member, or was it just yourself that kind of helped you draw that line in saying, if I don't get these people like in commercial operations hired, man, the company's not going to go as fast as it needs to? As you think back to that moment in your career, perhaps prior company, how did you come to that? Who helped you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So in my previous company, it was actually my board, and one of the individuals on my board came and said, we were at maybe about just over $1 million in annualized revenue, and this person, Andres, his name, came to me and said, hey, I think you need a better chief commercial officer to really take things to the next level. And it actually took me about 2 years to cycle through about 2 or 3 people until I found someone amazing that I could work with. And that really then catalyzed the business. And that person became, Jonathan was his name, became our chief commercial officer. And I believe he's still at the company that acquired my company. And this was kind of 8 years ago now.
Right. So you had an investor board member that was actually helpful. That's so important. People ask me, hey, will you be on my board? You be this. I said, yes, if I can be helpful, I'd be happy to consider a board seat, but I want to make sure I can be helpful. He says, nobody else says that. They just ask about the board fee and the stock. And I said, that's pointless. You know, I want to know if I can be helpful.